So this knowledge session is all about SDG 16. I hope everyone by now know all of the 16 SDGs. Am I correct? Yes? Okay, good. So this one is going to be about peace, security, and strong institutions. And it's my great pleasure to introduce three incredible speakers to the stage with me today. The first speaker I am introducing is Dr. Susan VIZE from UNESCO. She is the Regional Advisor for Social and Human Sciences. So welcome, Susan. Our second speaker is GAMBHIR BHATTA from ADB. He is the technical advisor in the governance group. Thank you. And our final speaker, it might not seem like it, but he is actually the mayor of the municipality of New Lucena, Mr. Christian Sarangan. So thank you. So how's everyone feeling this afternoon? Did you guys drink some coffee at the tea break? Yes? Okay, good. So we're going to, ask each of our speakers a few questions in regards to their work about peace and security. And then afterwards, we'll open the stage to you guys for your questions. So the first question is for Susan. Can you tell us a little bit about your work at UNESCO and also the experiences that you have in working in social and human sciences?
Technologically challenged. Thank you, Alice, and it's a very interesting introduction we had because I think you'll all appreciate that the amount of work that would have gone into the kind of campaign that you just saw is quite an amazing achievement. So I think that that's a really good starting point. So I work for UNESCO, and UNESCO's always known for education and culture. But in fact, UNESCO's purpose and the reason that UNESCO was founded was to build peace. It's one of the first agencies that was actually established after the Second World War, specifically with that in mind, that peace building really is about creating these connections with each other. And I think that you'll all know that the SDGs are all interconnected. You can't have peace without education, you can't have peace without dialogue, you can't have peace without a sound environment. So there's that connection between everything. So for us in particular, we're very interested in how the creation of dialogue, and particularly of young people, with young people actually talking and making connections with each other, how that can actually help to influence peace. We really believe very strongly that making connections and understanding each other and breaking down these kind of barriers, whether it's through dialogue or education or sciences, culture, different cultural understandings, interreligious dialogue as well as intercultural dialogue. This is one of the fundamental reasons or avenues for us to build peace, and it's particularly important that we do this with young people because if young people are more open-minded, we have this opportunity when we're talking with young people to really create an honest and trusting and open dialogue, which sometimes when we're talking with government or we're talking with other people, we don't necessarily have that opportunity. So this really is a critical place for making the change. And I think that's fundamentally one of the things you need to think about when you're planning things is how are you going to make the change? What is the change you want to make? And how are you going to get there? Okay.
Thank you, Susan. So the next question is for GAMBHIR. So as a member of a multilateral institution, how do you see in your line of work young people can be involved more effectively?
Thanks. Good afternoon. First of all, I must say I really, really feel out of place. I'm probably the oldest person here in the room. I've never been in front of so many young people. It's mind-boggling. And my worry is that I'll be talking in a different manner than what you're really normally accustomed to. But you'll have to excuse me for that. Second thing, sure, I remember looking at all the proposals that had come in, and I remember reading your particular one and actually voting for it. So I'm glad that you're here now and you've talked about whatever you've done. I can well imagine the context in which you're doing your work, because I'm not from Pakistan. I wouldn't even dare to understand the context and the hardships that you would have to go through with respect to reaching out to the people that make the decisions. With respect to the question that you had about what is it that we do over here and how we look at issues of governance and peace and SDG 16 and so on. Look, the best way of saying this is very few people understand what governance actually means, the way we look at it over here. When I first came to work here about 11 years ago and I had gone back I'm originally from Nepal, and my mother still lives in the village in remote Nepal. And I remember asking me what I do, and I said, well, I'm a governance specialist. And she asked me to explain that, and it's just different. I just couldn't. I know what I do, but I just couldn't explain it. But I know there's a link there somewhere. Now, with respect to how SDG 16 comes along, and there are 2 or 3 different parts to the goal, we tend to focus more on the accountable institutions part of it, not so much on the just and peace and that part of it, because there's a different mandate. This is a multilateral development bank. Our mandates are different. But where we see you come in is, for example, in getting people more aware of what is it that their roles are in society. So for example, if there's a $100 million project that's come up and they're building a road, it is actually very nice if the youth actually let us know what is it that you think about how things should happen. Because we rarely go out and reach out to the youth. We're always talking to government officials or somebody out there, a project engineer. We rarely go out and talk to the youth. So there's just a different way, I would imagine, of understanding your perspective of what should happen in that project. And that's a very different way of how we could probably make and do our work better. So for me personally, and I can imagine for many other people here in the bank, the more that you are able to provide feedback and data and information to us about what is it that you see on the ground, the easier it is for us to do our work. And I know sometimes it can sound very hard for you to do that, but we really urge you to be even more involved in actually reporting what is it that you see on the ground. So other than just doing whatever other social media work and everything, if you can also just be a little bit more involved in telling us what you see, I think that would be very helpful for us.
Thank you. I think, after this, it would be great if we can just break out into sessions and really think about what we're talking about here today and then actually creating action to follow up. Maybe later I'll talk to Ponzi about that. So, Christian, can everyone believe that Christian is the mayor, by the way? So, as a young public servant, how do you think you can encourage young people to get involved with participating in governance and nation building?
Hello. Hi, I'm Christian Sorongon, a 25-year-old mayor in my province, Iloilo, in the municipality of New Lucena. And the nature of my work is that I am a local chief executive in my locality, and I head as a local chief executive in relation to justice, peace, and strong institutions. I head the Philippine National Police, particularly in my locality. Nonetheless, as a young mayor, one of my ways in order to get the participation of the youth is definitely by implementing programs and projects and inspiring our young leaders in our community. And basically, when I'm still a mayor for just a month and a week, so I could share that during the campaign period, I'm not really sure with how the electoral system in other states participating right here now. But in the Philippines, campaign is really very important. And we have to mobilize humans, we have to mobilize individuals in order for you to forward your cause, your advocacies. And as a young leader, young individuals with our common advocacy, particularly on good governance, we definitely were able to get the support of the youth. So basically, also during the election, I challenged a 30-year-old political dynasty in my locality. And as of now in the Philippines, we will have a Sangguniang Kabataan elections. The Sangguniang Kabataan elections is an election of young leaders who are 18 to 24 years old in the Philippines, who will lead a council of youth, no, in certain localities. So it's more local, the lowest locality in the Philippines. So I'm definitely urging them to join governance, to join politics, to join public service, because I told them that we should not be hesitant in challenging, because of the Philippines, it's almost, politicians are almost 80% political dynasties. And so I am challenging all the youth in our country to join government service, because we can do something and we can do and implement and effect change in our society. So by inspiration, we can be able to get the support of the youth.
Thank you, Christian. So if anyone over here wants to jumpstart your political career, just talk to Christian after this. So the next question is for Susan. In this world, like Shahira said earlier, you know, it's increasingly dynamic, complex, where I personally think, you know, achieving goal 16 is increasingly going to be more and more challenging. So how do you think we can harness the power of young people to achieve and build a more peaceful society? Technical challenges.
Actually, I think that we just had a discussion in the other room, or actually in the center of this room when we were broken up before. And one of the things that we were talking about is about trust. And it's clear when we actually, we've been doing a bit of a survey to try to find out what young people trust in the world. And it's clear to us that young people no longer trust the kind of institutions that we had in the past. And I think that it's really great to see young people now not just standing back and say, but we don't trust these organisations, but someone like Christian is going in there and able to change things from within the institution. If you don't trust an organisation, what is the most effective way to deal with that? Just to stand back and say, well, I don't want to have anything to do with that, or to try to make change. And making change from within is a really good opportunity, because that's actually where the decisions are made, and you can get there on the ground. So, you know, some of the ways, another thing that happened a couple of weeks ago, another survey we were looking at, young people were asked about whether or not they thought they'd done something to change the world. And a lot of them answered that they'd posted something on their Facebook page. And then when they looked into it, they were asked, have you done enough to make change? And most of them said, yes, that's what we would do, and we would stop there. So when we're actually talking about engaging young people to really make change for peace building, this is what I meant by before, by how do you make change? What is that change you want to make? You really need to have a clear idea about what you want to achieve. And is making a post or putting up a picture or something on the internet really going to make change? It might stimulate some discussion, it might make a little ripple, but if you want to make a bigger change, what are the kind of things you can do? Can you run for local government? Can you be employed in a multilateral organisation? Can you achieve more change by working in the community? And young people have all of these networks and possibilities, and I think that the door is open. You can create something. Like we saw before, this was created by young people thinking about how they want to make change. So I really think it comes down to being really aware of what you want to do to make change, and then being persistent and committed to thinking about the ways that you can effectively do that. And they may not be the ways that it's been done before. This is where young people have another advantage, is innovation. What are new ways? How could you do it differently? We maybe have failed in our generation to make some of the changes. You could do it differently. Maybe you can achieve more.
Thank you, Susan. This is actually a really great segue to our next question to GAMBHIR. So in terms of your experience, looking at young people as change makers, what do you see as some of the challenges that young people might uniquely face in trying to, be a part of politics or, stepping into governance, being a part of this sort of space that you work in?
Yeah, thanks. In answering that, can I ask a question to Shahira? The question that I have for you was, when you went around and you talked to the various youths and you had the dialogue there, and they came up with whatever they had said were some of the issues, and these things were now out in the open. Then what happened?
So yes, from our part, the major objective was to stimulate, like you said, stimulate a discussion. We couldn't take it forward from that. But yes, one thing very categorically which we did was, when we had Project Discussion Garage and when we asked the students what one administrative reform would they want to introduce at their respective universities, whatever reform suggestion they came up with, we took them to the university administration. Two of them eventually, not many, but two of them got implemented at the university, I think, which is a feat given the dynamics we were operating in.
Thanks. I asked that question because this is something that we've faced in our work in terms of what the challenges are. It's one thing to go to, let's say, one part of a country and say to the people there, you know what, you really need to be mobilized. Let's say we have a big social mobilization program and everybody now knows what is it that their rights are, because that's good governance. Then what? If you're not going to give the government, for example, the tools and the resources to do something about it, but on the other hand, you've now got a very socially mobilized group, something's bound to give. The challenge for organizations like ADB or even those that are in government really is to say, once you've actually got people motivated and mobilized to let them know what their rights are, for example, you also need to have the other side of the equation, which is to make sure that you are providing for the space and the resources and the time and the mandate to actually do something about it. Otherwise, what will happen is all these issues will be coming out in the open and nobody does anything about them. And that actually engenders even further resentment, further alienation from the system, because you go, well, I talked about it, I want to go and make a change in this particular institution, but I just don't know how, or nobody listens to me. They're still not listening to me. So I just want to make sure that the way we look at it is, if you identify a problem and you know what the dynamics of the problem are, then you might as well set aside some resources to help make sure that the problem is addressed. If you just leave it there and it's coming out in the open, it doesn't really solve anything. So the problems that we have with respect to the governance programs that we work on, where we look at, for example, corruption issues in big projects. Once you've identified where the problem is, if you're not taking any action against the person that's corrupt, for example, you could come up with any of those reports that you can, but if nothing happens about it, that's just going to get